Rolling.
Abangani, everyone. This is Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, Africana Studies Department, where I taught for 34 years, African Black Studies, and along with my co-host, Joe Hembrick, who is a longtime educator and historian out of Linwood Unified School District, as well as the first head varsity football coach for the Linwood Unified School District, and Compton, working as an administrator, counselor at Centennial in the Compton Unified School District. We want to welcome you to the Conscious Corner and give praise and thanks to Brother Rashaki Maskani for providing us this platform to present a program to speak truth to the people. First, speak truth to ourselves, then the people, and then the power. And so that's what we're about. It's a think tank where we discuss critical issues that affect the African-American community, and we reach out to anyone who have substantive information that will move our community forward. We want to welcome Brother Sharawa Ochozie, who's going to be a presenter also tonight with me on the value of African-American history and his perspective, along with Brother Mschinda out of Louisiana, that is just an invaluable participant on the panels and in the discussions that we have on our shows, plus not just this show, Conscious Corner, but also the Community Education Network CEN program that's offered on Wednesday, tomorrow night, and hopefully you'll tune into that. That's hosted by Brother Raskani Muscone. But anyway, Rasiki Maskani, and hopefully that you would tune in. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at me getting old and forgetful. All right, go ahead, Brother Shari. When we left off, Brother Sharara, you there? You on mute?
Yes.
Okay. When we left off, you were saying history is here, and the importance and the relevancy of us looking at history as a futuristic aspect. Because you continue your position on African American history as you see yourself as a Rasta man. Brother Rawa is a deep thinker out of Atlanta who has a unique program to offer to African American people who want to build in Africa or in Jamaica. And he has a lot of wisdom from his personal experience as well as his education in life. He's lived in the East Coast in New York, and in Jamaica, New York, and now in Atlanta, and probably a few other places. We want to let him start off. Go ahead, Sharawa.
Yes, greetings unto each and every one that is present here. You know, I've been through so many Black History Month, and I see the same thing continuously happening. And Marcus Garvey told us one God, one aim, one destiny. And he also taught us forward ever, backward never. And it seems like, just like with everything else in this Gregorian calendar that has been handed to us, it's a repetitive, the history and this and the recollecting and referencing and the remembering of our history is a very repetitive practice. And I, as a Rastaman, we now present to our people and to the world at large, but most specifically to our people, a new form of thinking, You know, in the presentation I gave before New Faculty of Thinking, I spoke about Carter G. Woodson, which came in 1875 and continued forward to the ancestors in 1950. And there are so many others. We wouldn't even, we would have a whole entire university system, a Black university teaching system, as well as that high school teaching system, and so on and so on and so forth, to cover all the recorded information pertaining to our history. So what I came to the conclusion of in this 2024 and thinking about Black history is that Black history is something that is continuously, without stopping. It's an infinite history. It is being made even right now, as we are gathered on this platform to have this discussion. We are creating Black history. I looked up a few things. You know, the definition of the word history, its etymology, and the word definition. You know, and the history of a is the history of a word, which is etymology. You know, noun and so forth, is the history of a word shown by tracing it or its parts back to the earliest known form and meanings, both in its own language and any other language from which it or its parts may have been taken. Now, with that definition, that word is, what is the history of the word definition? And that was the history of the word definition. In other words, it comes from an etymological place, a noun. And in light of that, let's go back to the Caucasian race of people who we now misnomer and call white. Those race of people cannot go back to the earliest form because they weren't there. That's one form of that's one part of our history that we need to understand, that there were a point in our history where the Caucasian never existed to speak of. And then we go into, let's say, there's a book called The Underground History of American Public Education or American Education, very interesting literature. And it will tell you the diabolical plans that went on in order to create what we now send our children to call the American Public Educational System or the American Educational System. Now, also, I'm touching on these things briefly because I don't want to, I want to come to the point of where we're at. When we talk about Black history, the first university that was done to accept Black history into their curriculum, let's say, let me go back to it, was the University of, well, there were Black universities before San Francisco State College, but they were the first ones basically to start that course, to offer that as a study, and that came in because of the different things that were going on during that time, this is 1968, the 60s and 70s, in San Francisco. We're talking about the Black Panther Party, Black Power movement, anti-Vietnam War, and all these things were happening. And so the first ethnic studies program was instituted by San Francisco State College. Prior to that, though, there were Black universities that accept African Americans, which were one of those were Oberlin, they were the first to accept Black students without respect to race or matter of official policy and stuff like that. So the first HBCUs were founded in Pennsylvania and Ohio. That's before the American Civil War, which was from 1861 to 65, with the purpose of providing Black youth who were largely prevented due to racial discrimination from attending established colleges and universities with basic education and training to become teachers or tradesmen. This is what's going on. So, and I'm saying all of this with the full knowledge that everything that I'm saying right now, when I'm done saying it, it would not have liberated our people. Because this is information that's in history. And so history now, Black history, when they're talking about, they say here that Black history in the United States is rich, yes, and it says that though captives of free Africans were likely present in Americas by 1400, the kidnapped men and women and children from Africa were sold first to European colonists in 1619 and later to American citizens, become symbolic of the early years of Black history in the United States. So when I read a statement like that, it's like they're totally skipping a whole sector of our existence here in the mainland, and they're implying as if we only got here based on slavery and the slave ships and whatnot. So when we talk about Black History Month, and when we're talking about we have to be careful. We have to be really careful and understand and know how to separate discussing the past, because that's what history is. It's the past. It has nothing to do with what's going on right now. It's the past, and it's the study of the past. And the more we study the past, we're not really moving forward. We see happening in front of us right now. Cat Williams. I'm coming right now because you see, this is the history that's being made right now that we're not paying attention to. And we need to look at how we are separated and we are segmented. We have Cat Williams. He appears on the Shay show, some show by that name, and he speaks the truth about his experience in business that he's involved in. He's a comedian, and no comedian has ever freed our people. It was that, Marcus Garvey wasn't a comedian. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they weren't comedians. We now feel like, these people carry weight. Then you have Monique. Then you have the sister that was on Empire. You have Oprah Winfrey. You have Tyler Perry, and you have all these people. And history is being made. Significant history is being made. We're talking about the difference between liberated and being enslaved. Meanwhile, what's being pushed is democracy on the global scale, in the global arena. And we are here, we're looking at Pan-African convention shut down. We're looking at certain things that pertaining to us that we're trying to do. There was a gentleman, I think a Nigerian, died Tuesday. Today's Tuesday? Yeah. Went down in an airplane crash. He was over the monetary system in Nigeria, and another gentleman in Nigeria, it's like the equivalent to the FCC in America. He was on the helicopter. So the gentleman that's in charge of the finance and economics of Nigeria, him and his family meaning his wife and children, were on the helicopter, plus this FCC gentleman, of Nigeria. We're here in the United States on a helicopter going to the Super Bowl. Helicopter crashes, they all perish. See, this is historical things that's happening right in front of our face. wherein we already know who runs the world. And we know it's, we call them bankers. Some people call them banksters. You know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated because of his issuance of the greenback. John F. Kennedy was assassinated because of his issuance of silver certificates, putting silver certificates, meaning silver dot notes into circulation. He was stopped. He was assassinated. You know, meanwhile, the narratives and the history of everything is being recorded. But as I said before, history is only as credible as the historian is telling it. So when you look at these things, I just wanted to point out to those who are looking forward to Black History Month every year. Let's say take the first week of the month of February and look into and be dedicated to regurgitating the past information that we're aware of, and then let the rest of it be based on focusing on making history. When we talk about the civil rights movement, Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam, we talk about Marcus Garvey, we talk about Martin Luther King, we talk about Frederick Douglass, we talk about W.B. Du Bois, and all these individuals. They were making history. We're no longer making history. I don't see that really happening. Those brothers and sisters in the 60s, like Angela Davis and so on and so forth, they were actively in the Black history movement. They were creating it. That's not happening nowadays. We're going back and we're having discussions about what really happened and how it happened and who did what and all of this, which is, it's not a bad thing. It's just not gonna liberate us. We gave up equal rights and justice, because that's what we sought before civil rights. They transformed equal rights and justice into a civil rights movement. Then they turned the civil rights movement and included it with integration, because now within the civil rights struggle was the issue of segregation that legitimized the civil rights movement. Without segregation, what would be the civil rights movement be about? See, it wouldn't even exist. So it was really about equal rights and justice. We had the equal right to do this and to do that. Self-determination, self-reliance, and self-sufficiency. So they changed it to civil rights, thereby bringing in integration, bringing in something that was already there. We was already integrated into the American social system. We were just not given equal rights and justice. They turned it into a civil thing. Okay, now today, they're talking about democracy. Democracy. Everything is democracy. Democracy everywhere. But it seems like democracy for the Caucasian has a different meaning and definition than it does for the African. Because when you have a democratically elected leader like Patrice Lumumba, elected in the Congos, and then you have him assassinated, then democracy is something different for us than it is for them. So we need to have a different word. We don't need to be dealing with democracy, because democracy has never proven itself to us as being beneficial to us. So the word that I would replace democracy with is liberation. Liberation. Just like there are many words that have to be replaced, on a more simpler level. Let's say the word nice. The word nice needs to be replaced because it doesn't mean good. The word nice means ignorant, stupid, without non-knowing, unknowing. So, but we use it and you say, well, you know what I mean? We mean, it mean it's good. You got a good wife. You got a good husband. You got a nice wife, nice husband. You got a nice car. It means you got a good car. You live in a nice neighborhood. It means you live in a good neighborhood. But the truth to be told, the word nice does not mean that. That's not the etymological definition of the word nice. The etymological definition of the word nice is stupid, ignorant, unknowing. So it takes the place of the word good. So we need to start using the word good. Anytime we feel we're going to say, oh, you have a nice husband. No, say you have a good husband. You have nice children. No, say you have good children. You live in a nice neighborhood. No, you live in a good neighborhood. See? And so these word spells have been casted on us, and we use these things. And so this is really what I want really our people to look at and understand, that we are here to make history. We are history. We are the embodiment of history. Blackness is the truth, and we have to rally around our blackness. When we talk about the arrival of the first Africans, enslaved Africans, we talking about August 1619, 20 to 30 slaves came in Hampton, Virginia, aboard a ship called the White Lion. And then in the movie they call, I forget the name of the movie. The brother's supposed to be coming on tomorrow about that, I believe. The name of the ship is the White Lion. The ship that washes up on the beach. It's called the White Lion. And then they have an in 1619, again, another Africans arrived in North America as early as the 1500s. The first voyage carrying enslaved people direct from Africa to America probably sailed in 1526. So these history that they're giving us are all designed to keep us in the darkness and to keep us only focused on being enslaved or being enslaved, which we're not. We were enslaved. It was a war. We were prisoners of war. And this is really known, but they'll never teach it in their educational system. So really, Black History Month is a time when we can teach the curriculum to our people that they refuse to teach within the educational system. And I think that is a distraction, because we're supposed to be focusing more on how can we be unified people, how can we be more harmoniously, synergistically working together, how can we share resources, because every Black family and every Black individual does not have the same resources, and that's a plus, because if everybody had the same thing, then how could we work together to be more productive? That's why everybody is something else. We have a different skill set. We have different creativity. We have different resources that we can pull from. We are creating history now. We need to create it. We need to think about natural resources. How can we harness our own energy? We have a right to be able to harness our own energy, like solar energy, hydro energy, geothermal energy, wind energy. We have to be able to do that. Some of these things that we have to be able to do, it don't make sense to talk about it, because not on these platforms anyway. That's how serious it has become now. Look at the man, Killer Mike. Well-known brother. I think he was in the entertainment, rap business. I don't know anything really about him too tough, more than he's known, within the, he's influential in American, I think, rap music. And then he's talking about, starting a Black bank to deal with Black economics and so forth. And that's what he's been spouting on for a number of years, ever since I've heard his name. So just the other day, when was it? He won something like 3 Grammys. He wins 3 Grammys now. And then he wins the 3 Grammys, and then he's arrested right there on stage. See, that's some historical stuff. In front of his family and in front of the world. Now, what significance would this have? See, for me, as a Rasta man observing these things, I'm saying, okay, I know this man in terms of not knowing personally, but in terms of his track record, what he's about, the blackness, at least he talks but he's very focused on the economics and the finances of Black people. And then he wins 3 Grammys. You know what that means? If you were valued at $1 million today, and tomorrow you win 3 Grammys, you probably your value just went up quadrupled at this point. And your scope and your reach and influence just quadrupled. Same thing with Monique. When she won her Oscar, her stuff, she skyrocketed. But you see, you have to come under the powers that be in order to be, what you say, so a narrative can be drawn up of you, just like the narrative was drawn up of Martin Luther King. He had a dream, and you don't hear about, you may hear say Martin Luther King says, well, I think I have brought my people into a burning, what do you say, a burning building or some sort. I don't remember I'm paraphrasing. At some point within his journey, what had ensued. And so, Martin Luther King came to the realization. Malcolm X came to realization. He journeyed to Mecca and came back strong. And when he came back strong, what did he do? He was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. All these people, in other words, the road must never meet. We must never come together as a unit. And even if it's for the betterment of the entire world. So that's what I wanted to talk about, how this history that we call, Black History Month.
Unknown caller.
Is really a history that we are making right now. And I think what's critical right now for our people is we need to make history. We need to keep up with the tradition of our.
Okay. Thanks for that presentation, Brother Oshari. Brother Joe Hembrick, you there? Brother Hembrick?
Yeah, I'm there.
What, do you think there's a relevancy for Black History Month? I know you said cross the water, but that's one of the reasons they expanded it to 30 a month instead of a week, was to be inclusive of African history and ancient history. That's how come the historians came into prominence studying the ancient history of Black people and revealing that information. For years, we didn't know we built the pyramids. For years, we didn't know about Africa and the Sahara and things of this nature. And at the same time, the coffin text, the Book of the Dead, the hieroglyphics and all those writings and King Tut, all that came to life to us as we got older, if I'm not mistaken. But you go ahead and give your analysis.
Well, to quote the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a person without a knowledge of the history is like a tree without roots. And I heard what the brother was saying about studying the past and where we need to be going today. Well, studying that past will let you know some downfalls that you had back in the day and how you can avoid them moving forward. And speaking of the university, now when he was, and I don't want to get confrontation with the brother, but when he was talking about the European and you can't call them white, well, if that's the case, why are we calling ourselves black instead of adding some land and culture to the name that we're calling ourselves? And as far as the university and system goes, all kind of university systems that Africans had built over there in Africa, University of Wasset, Thebes, Grand Lodge of Luxor, the University of Salamanca in Spain, Genève and Timbuktu. And what our people need to know regarding this stuff is a lot of the things that we are taking part in today, like all of the sororities and the fraternities, they need to know that the root of all those things comes from those places, but they're claiming Greek, you know, because they do not know. And I would just say this, there's a lot of examples from the past that we can take. For example, with the Garvey movement, and I say that's the most, that's the largest movement of African people in the United States. But even before, you know, Carter G. Woodson, you had the Blyden Society, which later became the Harlem History Club, where Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben as teenagers attended to get the information that they had. And like other people, if you don't know the the stories of the past, you will make those same mistakes that they made because you don't know what went down. I understand how we got to move forward. For example, let's just say with the Garvey movement, with the Black Star Line and the triangular trade that was going on between the U.S., Western Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean. You know, the Garvey thing just wasn't a back to Africa movement. What a lot of people try to put on it. They were trying to get trade going on amongst our people. That can be studied. And how they went wrong, what brought down their demise. They used some of our people to do it. W.E.B. Du Bois, and some others who apologized to Garvey years later after it was all destroyed. But you know, looking at the Nation of Islam and talking about what they did, well, a lot of their stuff comes out of the Garvey movement. So it pays to look back. I don't say you got to dwell there, but you need to know it. And our people don't know it. And so, like I said, I'm in with how I started. For people without a history of the knowledge of the history is like a tree without roots. And the more that tree gets information, the stronger those roots will become. Now let's.
All right, Brother Mschinda, are you there?
I'm here.
Brother, do you see a relevancy of Black History Month? I think you had shared that you saw it as important and last time, but I want you to go over it again. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's all relevant. I think it's kind of like the New Year, you know. People have New Year's resolutions. It's like a reset, you know. Or you take Black History Month as a time to introduce some of the things that we're talking about to people that don't know anything about it. You know, like where I work at, you know. Like I say, we have attempts, you know, don't get me wrong, the Europeans who control a lot of the educational systems. I'm not at a HBCU or anything like that. So there's some challenges to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, you know, being able to maybe post some relevant information in some of the media centers, some of the areas where, you know, they allow it to be posted, to allow to have some guest speakers come in or talk about some of the relevant things that are important. I mean, the history is so vast that you know, we try to introduce things incrementally from a basic premise, and to, you know, expand on it, and to allow the ones that want to continue to explore the knowledge an opportunity to check in at another time where we can talk further, you know, about it, you know, that kind of thing. But it's definitely just to be able to use the month, since it's been designated, to initiate conversation every year, you know, because there's always people that are, you know, every year there's, you know, just introducing to people that are in the dark about certain information, you know, vast history. I'm nowhere near knowing, you know, what's out there, you know, and I've been in the game a long time, as far as exploring and learning, and has imparted the information, you know, on different levels throughout my adult life. So I just think it's just a good time, since it is designated, you know, with or without you or me, it's here, you know, they have it. It's called Black History Month. So it's a time to provoke thought and discussion like we're doing tonight. And all the contributions are appreciated. And, you know, I like to think that I contribute is the best way.
You on mute, Mschinda?
Mercy, you know, so there's a higher level conversation at the end of the day. You know, when we start talking about the controversies and what's right, what's fake, what's, you know, who was this and who was that and who did this and who did that. But just to be able to begin the conversation, it's a good time to do it.
Okay, good. Brother Rashaki, Mascani?
Yes.
This is part two. Go ahead.
Part two.
Yeah, of
Okay.
the program from last week.
Oh yeah. So I know that when you learn about, let me show this right here. Because I know when you're learning history, you're being exposed, like anyone who seeks to learn history in I would say popular history, which we mentioned already, Marcus Garvey, and I wanted to add to that, not really add to it, but expose what has been studied about Marcus Garvey. And this is something I just learned about Marcus Garvey. He had a letter. So let me share that video. I'm not going to play it, but you could go to Community Education Network YouTube channel and listen to it. But the brothers, Gerald Christmas, Dr. Charles Alexander, and attorney Larry Fields, they have an excellent show called The Level Set. And they talked about Marcus Garvey, the letter from the Atlanta penitentiary. Not only did they talk about that, they had more that they talked about. It was also another letter that they read from, well, not a letter, it was a response from Dr. John Henry Clark about the impact of Marcus Garvey. And the information that they provided was just excellent. It's information I've never seen before, never heard before. If you're not digging deep with the information about how significant these personalities was, and I know we don't focus purely on the personality, but we focus on the work and what you can draw from it, I think is very relevant. And now as we're talking here, we're only here an hour, 30 minutes or hour on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. There's so much other time where we're doing other things. You know, I'm still working. Brother Mschinda's still working. And there's other things that's happening to empower people, not only Black people, people in general, to become more humanistic. And so there's a lot of work being put in that we don't really see here, but we're discussing Black history, and as we should. It's world history, because according to studies and evidence, Black was first. So it's all relevant. I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing, and there's also things that we're doing when we're not here. And that's where most of the most important work is going on, is when we're not here. So I enjoy all the commentary by Brother Hembrick, Brother Mschinda, Professor Rahh, and Brother Gerard, all significant and relevant to me. Okay, Professor Rahh.
Yeah, appreciate what's all been said, if I understand correctly. And I really think everyone had major points to make, and I really appreciate their perspective. I just want to say one thing, that, you know, when we start going to school in the United States, and I don't know if Sharara went to, you know, I think he said he did go to school out here. And history is a requirement when you get in high school. World history, even in junior high school. If it wasn't relevant, but the European was given his story of history and left us out. But it's a requirement to graduate. To be promoted from middle school, or at that time I went junior high to high school, you had to meet those requirements, or you don't graduate. Same thing in high school, world history, but it's all about Europe. You understand? Then when you get into college, you have to take it again. You have to take your history, United States history, and the history of politics. And, you know, it's a requirement. You can't graduate. Joe had his degree, historian Joe got his degrees. And when he went to get his undergrad, he had to take history. Brother Rashaki got his college degrees. He had to take history. Mschinda had to take history. The European made it a law, not for us, but for his own people. So we weren't even allowed to go to his school. You know, we were in the United States, we weren't allowed. We was getting education on the continent. I mean, and you know, and so history is a requirement. And a lot of us say that, you know, a lot of the youth get in trouble because they don't know their history. Well, you have to learn from your history. And as Joe was pointing out, rightfully, learn the lessons of history. What worked and what didn't work. How to understand the system from its roots. The foundation of all understanding. Of any understanding, whatever you want to understand, you got to know its history. Let me give you an example. You deal with history every day. You go to try to buy a car or a house, they want your economic history, your credit card history, your history of paying bills. It's called a history of your credit report. Then you try to go anywhere else You have to prove your identity, either through a birth certificate, a California state license. How long have you had your license? That's all history, to prove your identity. That's what your report cards are about when you're in elementary school. That's what your transcript, you try to get a job, they want to know if you have an official transcript from an accredited institution. Why they say accredited? They mean that we approve, white folks. You understand? And so history is very relevant. What the founders of Black History Month, you have to study what he said, why he created Negro History Week. You know, he said, listen, he even wrote a book in 1930 called The Miseducation of the Negro, but before that he had magazines and articles out. He said, listen, I want to create a week where we concentrate on the accomplishment of Black people, because white folks have said we didn't do nothing. And they demonized Black. Two people changed that demonization. Well, three things changed. One was, as you said, Marcus Garvey. And he said what Black people done before, they can do again. And part of his whole platform was teaching history. That's what he came in from the Caribbean, Jamaica, wherever, and he started educating people, making them feel good about themselves, empowering them mentally and literally. How did he do that? Okay, the Civil Rights Movement was built on history. It was a Christian movement. It was about civil rights. Civil rights are rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. The right to vote, the right to own property wherever you want to, the right to education, and the right to employment. Those are the four pillars of civil rights. Civil liberties, that's freedom. Freedom of speech. Freedom to not be harassed by police. Freedom that they can't take your property and take into your house without a warrant and all that. Those are civil liberties. The civil rights are guaranteed by the Constitution. Civil liberties are guaranteed by the United States Constitution. Then there's human rights. That's a guarantee by the people. That's what the human rights movement is all about. Human rights, all people. And the United Nations tried to enforce human rights. That's why they're saying Israel today is committing genocide that's defined by the Human Rights Commission in 1948, which the United States didn't sign until 1986, because they had violated so many people's human rights. And so you go into those dynamics. Second, Carter G. Woodson said, look, if I could teach Black people their history, they'll feel good about themselves. If I could teach white folks Black history, it's because they will change their mind and educate them to the achievements and accomplishments of Black people. And that's why he started it. It's not about, yeah, you make history every day. Everything is history, as Charles said. I agree with him on that. You understand? But at the same time, you got to understand why he recognized that. He was a historian. You know, we make accomplishments every day, achievements. To say we're not making history today, to say Contasia Brown, who just got appointed to the Supreme Court, was not a historical event. Barack Obama, who got to be president of the United States, was not a historical event. The fact that Kareem Jabbar and LeBron James are the #1 scorers in basketball when they couldn't even be on the team until the 1950s. You understand? Now they leading scorers in the NBA. Bill Russell won more championships than anyone, 11, I think. Those are historical things in sports. So he's not only did Carter G. Woodson started Black History Month, he started a Black History magazine. You understand? Because our people were not being educated. The literacy rate of Black people going up to the 1950s was, I mean, they didn't even go to school. They didn't even go to elementary school. And most people didn't care. They was working. They was in rural areas in the South and sharecropping and trying to make it. But they worked hard for us to go to school. There was some that went to little schools. You understand? But I'm talking about, it was a struggle. And the whole purpose of Black colleges, that's why they call them A&M, agriculture and mechanical. That's what they wanted to train us to be. That's what Booker T. Washington was all about with Tuskegee. Hey, pull up by your bootstraps and get skills that the man needed. He'll hire you. Or you can create your own job. You can become a plumber, become an electrician, house painter, construction. They concentrated on that. They didn't even start teaching social science until the 1920s and things of that nature. The first that they were called safe school athletes. All of them were based on land by the United States to maintain, keep Black people from going to their college. Oh, you want to go to college? Here we gonna give you. We're gonna give you your own. And that's how Black schools got started. They were safe institutions. 50% of their faculty was white. 50% of their philanthropic people that gave money was white. And so they had in these Black schools. Yes. Can I call?
The phone called you. Can I call you back? I didn't mean to call
Yeah.
you.
Call me back.
Okay.
And so it's a struggle. But as Joe said so eloquently, Brother Hembrick, and I didn't know, and you too, Rusty. You know, if you don't know your foundation, you know, the potato chip has a history. Every sugar, the brother who refined sugar, has a history that many young people don't know. Why should they learn it? Because, as Marcus Garvey said, what Black people done before, they can do again. So history is very relevant. You have a history. And you're making history every day you live another minute. Because you ain't supposed, I mean, white people are killing people all over the world. You see them, they starving and killing the Palestinians. When you think of America, you don't think of the Native American. White people stole everybody's history, as Brother Hembrick said, the Greeks and Shara. Yeah, they went in there and stole and put their names on the book like they wrote them. Just like they put their name on the country and like they were here all the time. They act like they never enslaved us. They won't even apologize for it. That's more give reparation. And that's why you need to know your history so you can fight for those rights that Shara was talking about. People rights, human rights, and things of this nature, and hold them accountable. All keep their history of their ancestors. And we have to do the same of our achievements. So we set aside some time to talk about what we did the past year and recognize those that contributed to it. And we go into those that are events that were significant. And that's important. So, you know, to say history is irrelevant is not correct. The first democracy was in Africa. In John Henry Clark, Destruction of the Black Civilization, he talked about the first democracy constitution. Read the book. He outlines it. He spent 30 years studying. He studied so hard he went blind. He said, I had to start in Africa. In Europe. They said, why are you starting Black history in Europe? He said, because they stole all the stuff and put it in their museum. And so this is why we rediscover our history. Black people don't know that Haiti was the first African people that were enslaved that freed themselves and put their country all together. Europeans cracked back on them and creating all these problems today. But if you didn't know that history, then you would think that we were all just volunteered to be enslaved. If you didn't know the history of Q and the history of other Black rebellions on ships and on the ground that got our liberation, they still think Abraham Lincoln freed them. Until you read the stories and read the history. It's a very personal and relevant thing. I taught history, Black history, and Black psychology. People say, ain't no such thing as Black psychology. I say it ain't. I say psychology is based on environmental influences. You want to say it's hereditary, some is. But the majority is based upon the environment you grow in. We grow up in a racial environment. And we have Black music. You understand? It's Black people playing about Black people and their struggle and their achievement. The ritualization of Black experience. You understand? And the first, and the brothers that came here in 1619, brother Antonio and Isabella, they were indentured servants. It wasn't until a year later that they started chattel slavery. According to Jerome Bennett in his book, Africans in the Promised Land. You understand? But, but I'm not saying y'all don't know this. I'm pretty sure Brother Hembrick knows it. And I'm pretty sure Shara didn't heard it. It's through our history that we develop Pan-Africanism. That the brothers in Brazil, the brothers in Jamaica, the brothers in Haiti, the brothers and sisters in Belize, the brothers and sisters in Europe, and wherever, we are all from the continent. We may not know where and what part of the continent or what ethnic group we belong to in the continent. That's why we say we from Africa. What part? All of it. You understand? Was serious about his studies. He dedicated his whole life to that. He alienated people because he was relentless. Those that didn't want to focus on history, he didn't want to even deal with them. That's how important it was. And so when you deal with your children, they want to know who their great-grandparents was, even if they didn't make the transition. History is significant. It's significant. And so we did, that's what Roots was about. It's just a beauty. Now this year's theme, you wouldn't have a Runoko Rashidi, Ashwa Kwesi. These are young people that traveled all over the world, excavating our history, proving that Blacks were in Asia. Europeans were there. And all that stuff, man. That's a beautiful history, man. But one of the way they described it was there. If they say Blacks were in Alaska before and they part Indians, they part and mixed with Asians and formed Eskimos, you wouldn't know that their roots were Black African people. So this is, and that genetics has proven that all people come from African people because they were the first. This is what genetics has said. And so they found this gene that, you know, man, it's just such a beautiful history once you get, and it's empowering. It's empowering. You know, we have to sit down with our grandchildren and teach them these lessons because they're not going to learn them in school unless you send them to a Black conscious cultural school, like the Limbinko School in us organization, or the Institute of Positive Education in Chicago, or the Hakeem Mahadibuti. You understand? Oshula in Pasadena at one time. Many of them have turned to be charter schools and have to come under state regulations because they couldn't compete with the school system that offered a lot more, and they can get money to pay their teachers right. And you know, the European, when they first had teachers, they were nuns in religious schools. They had no degree. They were virgins to every damn thing, not just sex, but to even education. You know, I mean, the first person that got his degree got it from people that didn't have one. You understand? I mean, that's just reality. Yeah, the European, they commercialized education and indoctrinated education for an indoctrinational institution. And we go there with, you have to go there with a mindset. When Rashaki woke up and along the stage, he said, let me get my degree. He's one of the few Black athletes that got a degree. I was the only one on the basketball team that got his college degree on time with my class. Why? Because I had a Black orientation. And if you can hustle in them streets, you can go to school and hustle a degree. And I'm just saying, why do I need it? Well, to get in a position where I can teach others how to do it, and at the same time, educate them with sacred knowledge. Sacred knowledge, mystery system knowledge. Give it to them, spoon feed them, because they can't take it all at one time. It's too much. They're just regurgitated. You have to just spoon fill it until they get them. You know, I mean, you have to just keep them coming. Well, I gave good grades to everybody, so they come back. And I saturated them with Farrakhan, Malcolm, saturated them with Dr. Ben, John Henry Clark, John G. Jackson, just saturated. I mean, I made up my own damn curriculum. You understand? I taught what they supposed to learn according to the book. But when my time, I put on the videos and they can hear them directly with technology. And Marcus Garvey was one of the strongest, but there were other movements that we have not even discovered yet. That were the part of the Black liberation movement, not Black civil rights, liberation. And so that's the struggle. But anyway, I want to thank all y'all for your comments and your contribution to what, any response to what I said or anybody said. This year's theme for Black History Month, according to Carter G. Woodson organization, World Association for the Study of Liberal of African American History and Life and History, is literature. Literature is freedom. In a poem, you can say the moon is yellow, the moon is purple. You can describe things. That's how we were able to communicate. You understand? Through song. You know, swing down sweet chariot. You know, people get ready, there's a train coming. All of those were messages. We got that from Africa. The drum was a message. It was communication way before they had telephones. You understand? Making sounds for danger. Drawing art and leaving it on stones and on trees. A skull with crossbones meaning, hey, don't come in here. This is poisonous. This is quicksand. That's how they communicated. Art and literature is very important. That's why some of the greatest people were our poets. Some of the greatest people were our artists. Not only in song and dance, and every dance had a message in it. Ceremonies, marriage dance, death dance. It wasn't just doing the twerk. That's stuff they learned here. But anyway, go ahead, Rashaki. If nobody have a comment.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Brother Rashad.
Yeah, history is, what we say, like compulsory with life,
Yeah.
Life and
Go ahead, Oshara.
history of change over time. And this change is taking place politically, social, economic, scientific, technological, medical, cultural, intellectual, religious, military. Developments are all part of history. And so the reason why we now, and even Carter G. Woodson had the urgency to develop what was
You keep going out.
That we were no longer
You keep going out.
Yeah.
Chihuahua, you keep going in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that's happening, but is it still happening?
Not right now.
Yeah, so he had to do these things. And the reason why, when I speak and I said Caucasians, and I say white people, or you would say a Negroid or Negro people, and then you have other terms.
You keep going in and out, brother.
Say Black people.
You keep going in and out.
But within the history of my people, which is what we call Black people, or we call the Negro or Negroid race of people, the term white people was really a group of people within our system that were people that have a certain standing and certain privilege. They were called white, but they weren't white people.
I'm not following you on that.
It's being introduced to us. Yes, it's important for us to know, like the brother said, as Marcus Garvey has said, the people without knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. So it's like that's compulsion, like in the natural world, the mother and the father handed down the history to the children. The village handed down the history to their people. This were all, and there were no question in the history because the history spoke for itself. The people presented the history, and the people were representations of the history.
But someone had to document it.
No, what I'm saying to you is before what we call documentation was in a different format. It was handed down by word of mouth and certain symbols that we created, like in picture form and so forth. That's how we recorded it. Before we talk about paper and pencil or paper and pen or what we now call documentation. There were a time when manifestation was the documentation, where we lived according to other principles and precepts that have been washed away.
Are you saying there were no griots, that the people weren't signed in certain African communities?
Well, you say, when you say,
they call them griots. Are you saying there weren't none? You
God
won't.
would say certain things, and stories were spoken. This was spoken word out of the mouth. And that's how our history was recorded in its, I'm talking about in its early state, before paper was discovered, before paper was invented, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was pictures and symbols and word of mouth.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. So now I'm saying those are still relevant. And the writings on paper and papyrus and so forth is still relevant. But we are
somebody has to research it, and so that people would know that. How would an average kid who's in school know that that was a part of our history if someone didn't organize it and research it and show them that they did it? That's why Crazy and Runoko Rashidi and other young historians like Joe, they go to the continent and they live amongst the people.
They have to do that. That was their job. That was their work. That was their mission. They had to do that. No one can take anything from those brothers, because without them, what would we be able to stand on? You know, this is the facts. Without the ancestors that built the pyramids, and the ancestors that built the pyramids in the Americas, and the civilization.
You keep going in and out,
Areas
brother.
of the earth. Those things had to be done. What I like to, like I say, we have to adapt a new thinking. The thinking method is what has to change now, because the thinking method will determine. Said the truth is coming out now. The people that are speaking the truth, that is a part of history. Never done it before. And those who did it before were assassinated, were killed, wiped out. And I'm talking about not people that are talking about for blackness now. I'm not talking about just people speaking truth in general. You know, entertainers assassinated, just taken out in order to control their black community.
Yeah.
Brother Chawara,
Yeah.
You've been going in and out. We're gonna have to do it again.
Okay.
The technical difficulties is.
Yeah. Once he tells us what tomorrow's recipe.
Okay, so we're gonna do part 2 of Brother Muko, Leave the World Behind movie, and we're gonna finish that up. So that's what's going on tomorrow. So we're gonna take our pause. That's correct, Professor Rahh?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, are you gonna do a part 3 of this, or?
No, we over. I'm trying to get Rose to be on next week.
Okay. So we'll revisit with some more, so we can hear Brother Chawara more clearly. We'll be back to visit subject matter at a later date. So each one teach one in Conscious Corner. So everybody have a good evening.
All right, brother.